But as you can see on the flashes, on your screens rather, SEBI is likely to issue a notification which is soon to give identified shell companies time to explain their position. Let's quickly take it across to my colleague Ruchi Bhatia. She joins us on the phone line. Ruchi, what does the Finance Ministry now have to say on the SEBI circular on shell companies?
So, Aisha, this was, of course, a big point of concern for some of those listed names that were a part of the 300-odd companies that SEBI had named and had called them shell companies. Now, we understand that Finance Ministry and, of course, Ministry of Corporate Affairs have, spoken to market regulator SEBI on this issue. In fact, SEBI is likely to issue a notification very soon to, in fact, give these companies, some of these companies, time to explain their position. Many of these companies have already reached out to market regulator SEBI, but some sort of a notification is expected where some time frame will be given. In fact, these companies will be asked to submit documents to prove their stance, and of course, one can expect the trading to resume in about a dozen of these companies to resume in about a week's time. Apart from that, why this action was taken. There were 2 or 3 key reasons why we do know that the action was taken against these companies. Firstly, there were, there was a spike in trade, significant spike in trade that one saw during the demonetization period for these companies. And apart from that, some of these companies were, seen avoiding taxes. So that was something that got the government to crack down on these companies. In fact, what we do know is that now market regulator SEBI will ask these companies to explain their position, explain their stance, probably even give their balance sheets and, of course, give their returns, tax returns as well, to see how things have really panned out.
Okay, Ruchi, thanks a lot for that. In fact, we have with us Amit Tandon as well from IIAS just to talk a bit more on this new development. Well, yes, the SEBI has given them a notification to shell companies to explain their position. Amit, good morning. Thanks for joining in, or rather good afternoon. This is something that had to happen because a lot of companies did say that they did not even receive a show cause notice or an SCN prior to, of course, being labeled a shell company by the by the regulator. It's something that's a natural course of action. How do you think that the proceedings are going to move from here on?
Well, very clearly, it is doing now what it should have done day before yesterday, which is first write the companies, ask them for certain documentation, figure out whether they are shell companies or not, and if they're not shell companies but have business operations, allowed them to trade. If there were certain issues with regard to money laundering or certain other non-compliance, they should have addressed that issue separately. What they've done through this is they've kind of penalized a set of investors more than they penalized the companies, but so be it. I think what is important now is that the speed at which they react. At least, as you point out, about a dozen odd companies are genuine companies with business operations, and they need to kind of ensure that these are very quickly, the cases in these are certainly examined very quickly, and they're put back to the original category in which they were allowed to be trading. For other categories, of course, if there is genuine concern and they are shell companies, then SEBI needs to figure out how do they deal with these companies and how is it that they can have an orderly unwinding from listing on the stock exchanges.
But we were just talking about, the seemingly genuine cases, the likes of pin conspirates, or for that matter, Parsimnath developers, etc. Do you think these companies would be able to provide sufficient paperwork and maybe get the ban lifted then and not be declared shell companies?
Look, absolutely. It should be possible, but you need to take a step back and see what was the criterion which was there and why were they included in the first instance. So if there is a well-known criterion which is there that you need to have operating, businesses need to be operating, or in terms of, you could be defined in terms of turnover or the number of employees or whatever criterion they choose, then it should certainly happen. What the criterion is, one is less sure about at this moment. So the exchanges should very quickly put out this criterion, get the companies to kind of submit documents, validate it against an existing checklist, and move these companies back to the relevant category on which they were trading before yesterday.
Amit, there's another fear, of course, that by the time, you get the all clear from the exchanges, from the auditors, from the regulators, the entire proceedings would take time, naturally. This is something that's going to, given that it is going to take time, there is going to be a restriction on trading until that period of time. So, that is something that I think should be a big concern, right?
Well, yes and no. If they decide to wait for all 161 companies and then take a view, then it will certainly take a long time, because if some of the companies are shell companies, they may not be able to give the necessary information. But if you were to kind of say that, look, as and when companies submit their data and they're going to be examined on a case-to-case basis, then they should be able to do so relatively quickly. SEBI and the stock exchanges should be mindful that you do have mutual funds who have invested in some of these companies, a handful no doubt, but nonetheless it will have huge impacts on the NAV and could be debilitating for the firm. So if you need to preserve the integrity of the market, the integrity of the reporting by the mutual funds, they need to recognize that they have to act quickly and cannot wait for all the companies to submit every bit of information before they start to do so.
Okay, Amit, thanks much for that perspective really on what the Finance Ministry has to say about the SEBI circular, that they may issue notification soon to give identified companies time to submit sufficient and relevant papers and time to explain their position in with regards to them being credited as shell companies, and the companies may be asked to submit documents to prove their stand as well. The government expects trading in about a dozen of these companies to resume then in a week's time.